Prime IV Delray Beach helps you feel better, look better, and perform better with IV vitamin therapy. Each of our IV drips is the equivalent of 2.5 gallons of hydration and a custom blended mix of vitamins designed to help you reach your health goals. The top complaints we address are more energy, better sleep, sports recovery, meaning less soreness when you work out, or a great boost to your immune system. Come in if you're feeling under the weather or to help stave off those nasty bugs if someone's in your house and brought them home. Use the code word SWEET, SWEET, for 20% off any IV treatment valid at the Delray Beach location only.
Hello, everybody. It's Andrea Trout, and this is Sweet and Spicy Podcast. I'm here with Carolina.
The spicy one.
The spicy one. Also known as salty now.
Yeah, apparently I'm salty too. I'll take it, whatever.
That's because somebody that I might be dating has dubbed her salty.
Yep. I like it.
I know.
It's cute.
He just gave you a cute shirt.
He did. I love it.
And it's even his birthday, so you got presents on his birthday. I didn't get presents on his birthday.
You get presents every day, though, I'm sure.
Do I?
In one way or another.
Do I? I don't know. We won't go there, but.
Speaking of not going there, what are we talking about today?
I think we're doing a dating update, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, am I not knowing what we're talking about? That would be not abnormal.
Yeah. Because you usually don't prepare.
Not really. I did read the book you sent me. I'm like 60-something% of the way through it.
It's good, isn't it?
It's super interesting. Like I told you before, I kind of wish you gave more concrete examples, but we'll talk through some of that.
So, so I guess we should start this episode with a confession.
Yeah.
So, since the beginning, since we started this Sweet and Spicy podcast,
I think I know where this is going.
I have been completely against online dating because I have done it before and I've had some nightmares come out of it. And I don't know. I just don't like it. So I was bored recently. And by the way, it took me like 2 weeks to tell you.
I know.
You're the last person I told.
That's bullshit, by the way. I call bullshit complete and utter.
So one night I was bored at home and I was like, oh, fuck it. I was like, let me just go. And I wasn't going to do the Tinder or the eHarmony or Bumble. I was going to say Humble. Bumble, I don't even know what the names are these days. So I was like, let me do the easy one and I'll do the Facebook dating one because at least it does connect you with people, in most cases, with people that you have mutual friends with. And
see, I almost think that's worse. Is that weird?
You know, it's funny because I had done Facebook dating in the past and somebody reached out to me, a guy had friended me, and we did have a mutual friend that I went to high school with, and he ended up telling me that he did get some intel on me prior to contacting me. He called her, and he was like, what do you know about this Carolina girl, and blah, blah, blah. And she, said whatever she said, and he called me. So I was like, wow. So I'm like, but that's kind of smart, and at least, they're not serial killers or whatever.
Yeah. That we know of.
Right.
That'll be our next podcast.
Right, exactly.
How to not date a serial killer.
Yeah, we might have to do
leave it to date one.
Yeah, exactly.
From Facebook dating.
So
I shouldn't say that.
So I went on there, and one good thing did come out of it. I did reconnect with a friend that I had not seen in almost 30 years.
Wow.
And so that was really cool. And we went out, we had drinks, had a great time. And now we're back to Facebook friends. And so it was cool that they're back in my life.
Is this the guy you went out with in Coral Springs?
Correct.
Okay.
So, so that was awesome. I mean, I never expected to meet, to reconnect with somebody after 30 years.
Yeah.
But we are just friends. And then as soon as I was about to get off of it, I was like, okay, it was a complete nightmare. Like, first of all, you go down the rabbit hole of the swiping and, and then the next thing you know, it's 2:00 in the morning. I'm like, this is why I hate this. There's so many reasons why I hate it, but that's one of them. And, if I saw one more bathroom ab pic, I was going to shoot someone. And I really want to go on there and be like, I just want to go on there just to give advice.
Yeah.
And be like, don't do that. It's just, why? Like, to me, I don't know. Like, that's not, like you were saying one time, like women are not visual, men are.
Yeah.
To me, that's gross. Like, I'm not interested in what your abs look like. And it's just, yeah. And women are different. I really don't care.
Yeah, show me your life. Where have you been? Where have you traveled? What are your hobbies?
Exactly.
Like,
that's what I want to see.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit about what your bathroom looks like and your bicep. It's just so crazy how many pictures of that were on there. So,
I mean, honestly, if they're smart, they would do like a gym one because they're working out. They're in their gym clothes, but not shirtless,
right?
And not
and just
like overtly, right? But one in the gym that's a little bit of like
the gym,
right?
I don't need 10 pictures.
Yeah, but that's where they spend all their time. That tells you.
I think I'm going to create a business being like an online dating advisor.
Here's a great idea. Do we have any volunteers? If somebody's listening to this and wants to volunteer, let's find a man who wants to online date, and we can be his advisors for his profile. And we could do one where we like adjust it, and then we could do one as an update down the road.
Yeah, I like that.
Who can we find?
We may have a candidate coming soon.
Oh,
you never
I like
know.
it.
We
Okay.
talked about him today. Who knows?
Oh,
remember the one we're being introduced to?
Yeah. Okay.
So you never know.
I don't know. I think there's other ulterior motives there, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. So anyway,
and there could be multiple reasons, like not all connected.
Oh yeah.
So I'm just curious to see.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So right before I was about to just like end it and be like, okay, I'm done with this.
Dating.
I did meet
Facebook dating.
Right. I did meet one more person, and we've been FaceTiming, and all good. I'm not going to get too much into that, but we'll see how that works out. But I have since gotten rid of that. No longer on there. I think I was there for 2 or 3 weeks, and I was done. And one of the crazy things that happened was I had started talking to this one guy via text. Well, on the message thing, but I never check it. So it would be like 3 days, and there would be a message.
Yeah.
So we exchanged phone numbers, and the pictures on the site, super cute, like really cute. And then he sends me a picture of him golfing he's in a golf cart from like 2 days ago. And he's like, oh, this was Sunday. My mouth hit the floor. I'm like, oh.
You were catfished?
Totally.
Yeah.
The pictures that are on his profile must have been from 30 years ago.
Right.
And I'm like, what are you thinking? And I'm not conceited at all, but what made you think that this would date that? Like, no, I'm sorry. And that sounds terrible.
Well, I guess to me, the bigger issue is show up as who you are right now.
Right.
And it's interesting because do you remember the guy I went out with? He took me to dinner at Avalon.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a match, and he was a sweet guy. It just wasn't a fit for me. But he was like, he complained of that. He's like, he gets all these ones from women that are like 20 years old, and now they're like in their 50s or something. And he's like, they don't look like the photo. Why not just post your photo?
Right. Why waste time?
I don't get it. Because I think that
they just like the attention,
or they think that you get to know them and are going to fall in love with the personality you'll put up with whatever else. And I'm like,
yeah, maybe, but no.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was when I decided, okay, this is why I don't do it. Like, I feel like it's just so much BS on there, and it's fake shit. And I was like, well, at least I connected with an old friend.
Yeah.
I got that out of it, and then we'll see how this one turns out. But
so if this doesn't turn out, are you going back to it?
No.
Never.
I don't know about never, but I mean, definitely not anytime soon.
Never say never.
Obviously.
It's not. And, look, I was to a point where I had, like, shut down the stuff anyway before I started dating the boat captain. And I deleted them after I started dating him anyway, but I was close because I was so over it. And the same thing as you. Like, I didn't use Facebook dating. I used, what did I use? Hinge.
Oh, yeah.
Because of Sarah. And I wouldn't check it. I wouldn't check my messages, and then they're like,
right.
It's time intensive. I will give you that. And that is the biggest frustration of people not being who they were.
Right.
Like, show up as yourself. Like, that's who I'm going to date anyway. If I'm going to date you, why not put out there who it is? So,
if anything, I would rather you see me at my worst.
Yeah. Right.
Because then it's just going to get better.
Yeah.
from there.
And Allison Armstrong, you know, the dating coach I've talked about, she's like, show up to your first date how you show up if you're with this person for 5 years. Like, how are you going to show up in 5 years? Are you going to get all dolled up and put on the heels and the dress and stuff? If yes, then great, do that. She's like, and you know, she's in her 60s. She's like, she was going on a date and she was going to shave. She goes, am I going to shave on a regular basis? No. So she didn't shave for the first date.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, that's funny. But it's legitimate.
Yeah.
Because if somebody's not willing to put up with it, they know right away.
Right.
You don't
And
waste each other's time, like you said.
Even the one that I'm talking to now, I mean, I sent him a picture right out of bed with messy hair, no makeup.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what now?
Yeah.
And it was totally fine.
Yeah.
So, and then, you know, in a sense, when that happens and they're like, okay,
Right.
I still like you. It's like, okay, that's more of a genuine person.
Well, and I think that women, and tell me what I know you'll tell me your thoughts on this, but I think women, we have these ideas in our mind that men need us to be in makeup or a certain way. And that, from my understanding of it, is for most men, they could care less about the makeup and stuff, you know? Like, I think what really shines through is when when you are authentically who you are, and like, you're super funny and you're outgoing and, you know, you can be salty and like, you can also be sweet and you're funny, like I said. And when you show up as that, you're irresistible to people in general, but let alone men that want to be with a woman who's herself.
Right.
That, I think, is what is really appealing. And we think it's like, oh, we have to look perfect a certain way.
Well, I think that is attributed to social media.
The perfect life, Instagram.
And also, you know, being in South Florida, those kind of men, and I don't know about anywhere else, maybe it's the same everywhere, but we live here, and so I can only talk about here. But especially the younger they are, they're looking for that South Florida Barbie girl with fake boobs and a 25-inch waist and all dolled up like a trophy wife.
Yeah. I think some are. Some aren't.
And so I think it's very special when you find one that isn't. If you're looking for a real, genuine connection and you're looking for a life partner, I think those are the men that are not looking at that. So but if you're looking to get laid and have a good time.
So let's talk about the book, because they had a video in there that spoke directly to this. I know, and we'll post a link to that too. I'm making more work for myself, but it's right. It was called The Economics of Sex.
Okay.
And it was basically like, there's more men that want to have sex and there's more women that want to commit and be married or have a committed relationship, right? And the dichotomy is women are in control of when you have sex with somebody, and he talks about this in the book, that as a woman, when you have sex with a man, you've given away the best of your cards and your power. Because the man's power is whether or not he's ready to commit. And so this video talks about that economic imbalance. And so it goes to what you're saying of like whether you have somebody wanting to just have sex, and there's an element, and look, I'm not dissing men here. I love men. I really love men. I think men are often maligned unjustly because they're different than us and we think they should behave a certain way like women should behave, and they're not. They're men. They need to behave how men behave. But they also have a drive that is often sexual, right? I would dispute that men have a higher sex drive than women, but maybe testosterone has something to play, but I don't know. Anyway. So that's a different topic for a different podcast episode.
I think it's funny that you bring that up because I read this in one night.
Yeah.
And the very next, I had already ordered another book, and it was
from him.
No, from Steve Harvey.
One you told me.
And it was Act Like a Lady and Think Like a Man. Mm-hmm. And one of the chapters is how simple men really are, and they only need 3 things in life from a woman: honesty, loyalty, and the cookie.
The cookie.
He's
sex.
like, that's it. He's like, and I'm telling you, he's like, if you aren't giving that up, they are going to go somewhere else and find it.
Yeah.
And it's just how they're built.
Yeah.
It's how they're wired. It is nothing negative. So when you're talking about we don't know men's behaviors and things like that. That book is very insightful into how men think.
Yeah.
And why they do what they do or say what they say. And it's very helpful, actually, to read that. It's kind of getting into the man's mind. And that's the purpose of the book. If you understand how a man thinks and how they're wired, your relationships might be better or might work out longer or whatever.
Yeah. And that's a lot of things like the same I've done with Alison Armstrong, like listen to some of her stuff because she talks about that. And she's done a lot of like interviewing of men. She actually has because they're her Audible books. If you go to Audible, they're recordings of her like weekend workshops. And there's one that there's a panel of men and they ask them questions. And it's so enlightening because us women think about it so backwards sometimes.
Yeah.
And on the book that I love, and it's a little bit like the Steve Harvey, and I haven't read that one, but what I imagine that book to be, it's called The Way of the Superior Man, where he's talking about how men should understand women and also like elevate themselves as a man. That book I love that book, and it's been recommended in many, many things that I've been listening to lately. It's so powerful. And so I think all these three are in that same arena of topics.
Yeah.
Like on this of how men think, how women think. So it's cool. There's a lot of good info out there.
So the one that we were reading just now is...
Never Chase a Man.
Yeah, Never Chase a Man Again in 33... What was the title? 33 Ways.
38 Dating Secrets to... Hold on, I lost it. Get the Guy, Keep Him Interested, and Prevent Dead End Relationships by Bruce Bryans.
So this will probably end up being a part 1, part 2 episode because there's a lot to go through. But
yeah.
The first one that they talk about is never be too accessible. Before a serious relationship develops, do not allow yourself to be too available to a man, as men quickly tire of that which is easily obtained. And I totally agree with that. And I think women in some cases are the same way. I love a challenge. I think most men love a challenge. And if things come too easily, it's like, I didn't really like...
Sure.
I didn't have to work too hard for that. And
it's human nature.
Right. So I think it also depends on the person. And I think he talks a lot about playing games. And I remember when I was dating and when I was younger, I would always play the game. And like, if a guy texted me, I would do, okay, so I'm going to text him back in like an hour and a half. Or he called me. Well, I'm going to wait 3 hours before I call him back. And I think that has a lot to do with age because now I don't do that. Now I'm going to reply when I see the text. I don't play that time game.
Yeah.
And so I think it changes as we get older. The whole, being available and I don't know. What are your thoughts on that one?
I mean, for one thing, you and I have lives. So I think that is kind of what he's talking about. And in terms of, my experience of it, it's like you have to bring value to my life to make me want to disrupt my life because it's pretty good. We have fun. We have a great friend group, girl gang, can't talk. I have a business. I'm opening 2 more. You've got a daughter. She's starting school again. She's on a travel thing. You have a very thriving career. You have family, right? We have a lot going on. So yes, I like being in a partnership, a romantic partnership, but it has to bring value.
Right.
So, in terms of the accessibility, like you better bring something really interesting to me to disrupt that. So I think it's kind of in that regard.
Right. And at this point in your lives, to your point, it's kind of hard for us to be easily accessible.
Yeah.
Because of how busy we are. So it kind of works in our favor, like without even trying.
Yeah. And I think the hardest thing for me is the texting because I'm on, I use it for business. So my phone's usually nearby, right?
Right.
I imagine the same with you. And there's a definite habit there I have of checking the phone, right? So that's the thing of like, do you respond to somebody right away? And historically I have because I'm just like, oh, I'm on the phone,
Right.
And I remember dating the guy in California. This was a long time ago. And like, I would reply to him a lot very quickly. And there were times he wouldn't reply to me. He was a nurse. He worked in the ER, so I got it, right? And there was one time I didn't reply to him and he got mad. He got so upset with me, like, and kind of went off. Like,
That's an issue.
yeah. And we handled it well. Like, I give him credit, but I was like, you know, this is reverse of usual, and I don't get mad at you because I know you're at work, and I was at the office, I was doing things, I was busy, like I wasn't ignoring him,
Right.
and it really was like WTF, you know, and so, but we had a very grown up conversation about it, which is what you have to do, right? So it was credit, but like you do have to know that sometimes my phone's there, and there's times I'm not paying attention to it. It happens,
Right.
so you know, but. I don't like the game playing, and that to me is like where he doesn't do a great job in the book of where's the line of game playing versus like don't be accessible.
Right.
You know?
I get what you're saying, and the next book, the Steve Harvey book that I'm reading, has concrete examples. Like there's scenarios that he puts in there, like 10 different scenarios. You know, imagine this happening, and it's the girl says this, and the guy replies this way. So if you read that book, you're going to see concrete, and it kind of ties into a little bit of what this book is saying. So,
you know, it's funny because I actually, you know, there's a movie of that, right? And I watched the movie on that probably a month or two ago. Like randomly, I was somewhere, I was like, oh,
Really?
This is funny. Yeah. Because like isn't one of the principles in there where you don't have sex with a guy for 90 days?
yes.
And there was a woman in the movie who was like not having sex for 90 days. And of course, the men are all like, they're friends and like talking, and the women are all, it's funny. It's pretty funny.
So speaking of texting, it leads into the next one. It says, be cautious in how you keep in touch with a man. Do not dominate the initiations of contact if you want to keep his interests in you both elevated and unmistakable. So this is interesting. I am probably pretty good at that. I don't typically initiate like the first text of the day.
Right.
And the guy that I'm talking to right now is very good about that. He's always the one, good morning.
Yeah.
And I don't care if it's 11 o'clock in the morning and you haven't texted me. I usually don't text.
Mm-hmm.
However, I do believe it's a two-way street.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe every few days I'll be the one that says something.
Yeah.
But I do think there's something to be said for that.
For sure. I agree. And that's my MO is I usually let them lead in that. I prefer that. And, you know, like, so one of the things that comes up in this vein, like that I really like that Alistair Armstrong says is, you know, some men have a harder time making plans or even thinking about it. Like, and it may just be they're focused on work or whatever, right? So like say that you're dating and she's like, he hasn't asked you out for the weekend. So how she says to easily ask and say, look, I'm scheduling my weekend and I wanted to check in with you. Did you want me to save some time for us to get together, or are you busy this weekend or something like that?
Right.
And it's an easy way of saying, I'm busy, I'm making plans. I just wanted to check and see if we're going to get together. You know, I'm not asking you out. I'm not like making the plans. I'm just saying, should I save some time? Because that way they're like, oh, I better reserve some time with her, right? What do you think of that? Because that to me is kind of like this where I'm not necessarily like the one doing it, but also checking with them to see if they have it in mind. Do you see what I'm saying?
I don't know. I think that just depends on the person, but I don't think there's an issue with it.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know. I don't think there's...
Because in here, too, he talks about, like, if they're not making plans with you, especially to go out,
Right.
it's an indication that they're not that serious.
Right.
And I do think that's very true.
I do too.
And because the other part he talks about is especially if they're like, and I mean, this to me is a little obvious, but if it's always like your place or theirs, and they're not wanting to go out on a date, like they're not considering you as valuable. And
Correct.
100%.
I do agree with that.
Me too.
I do agree
They
with that.
tell you who they are and how they're thinking through their actions.
Right, right, exactly. You have to be, I think you have to watch more than listen almost, and watch their behaviors and what they're doing. The third one is prioritize phone calls over texting. And this one's interesting because, for one, you and I have spoken about this in the past where I'm like, I've asked you when I was not online dating and you were into it, have you guys talked on the phone? And in most cases, you had said no. And for me, that was always the case online dating as well. There was no phone calls. There was no FaceTime. It was all texting. In fact, many times when I met the person for the first time, we hadn't even I'd never even heard his voice.
Right.
And this was the first time. In fact, I was kind of like, when I saw the text, this guy sent me a text and he's like, do you want to FaceTime tonight? And I was like, what do I do with that? I'm like, that's what? That's like, to me, that's like going on a coffee date. What do you mean, like FaceTime? And so I was kind of thrown back by that. And I was like, well, that's kind of cool. So I was like, okay, so we did. It was great. We were on the phone for like 45 minutes, and then it's been FaceTime calls every day.
Wow.
So I actually enjoy the fact that it was not even planned, and I'll be at work and I'm getting a FaceTime call.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really cool. But I think there is something to be said for if a guy is not willing to pick up the phone and call you,
I agree.
then he's not that into you.
The only caveat I'll give is I just looked, and this book was published in 2015. And there is an element of we communicate as human beings more on text these days than calls, right? Even in business, to some extent, like in my business, you can text us rather than call because... And, I kind of put a line of demarcation about age groups.
Yeah.
If you're under a certain age, you're more likely to text. If you're over a certain age, you're more likely to call.
Right.
I think we're just under the wire for texting, maybe. Yeah. You kind of get into that 50s. Like the guy in California, again, this is ages ago. He told me when we were texting, because we texted a lot. And I texted a lot, especially back then. I'm way better about it now. But he was like, I've never texted anybody in my life as much as I've texted you. And
Really?
he was what, like 5 or 7 years older than me?
Yeah.
So, like, again, that little bit older generation is like, they're the ones that don't text. So the fact that this book was published 9 years ago now, I do think there's a shift. So let's give a little bit of leeway for that. But I think the point is, if somebody's not willing to call you, it's an indication that they're not that into you.
Right.
And we have a mutual friend, I won't say who, but she was the one recently that was like, oh, yeah, I have to FaceTime them before we go out because I'm not wasting my time. So it's like her requirement. It was like, oh, that's actually really good.
Yeah.
Because now you can see if you're being catfished.
Correct.
They have to be more present than a regular phone call because you're on video.
Right.
So there's a lot of benefits to it. I really think it's a great tool that we have. That technology's given us in the way of dating and time wasters.
Yeah, I agree with that. So the last one we'll get into is I have a very bad problem with this one. And it's not on purpose, but do not speak ill of your exes, especially if you're just getting to know a guy. So
it's very true.
I made this mistake recently, but if you ask me why something didn't work out, I'm going to tell you.
The spicy's going to come out.
Right. So I'm not going to let them look like they were these fabulous men if they weren't. And if you're asking me, I'm going to tell you. But all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, I hope they don't listen to the podcast because I talk a lot about that and what they did.
But there's a difference between being negative and facts.
Right.
Like, if you're like, oh, this guy was just a piece of shit and this and that, and you're just dissing them, that's very different than you're like, their emotional response when something went wrong was very childish and I could not handle that. Like, it wasn't working for me,
right.
that was their emotional level.
Right.
I'm not speaking of anybody in particular.
Okay. So I think I gave facts. I don't know. I think I remember with one of them, I said that.
Yeah. It's a mix.
There was emotional issues and trauma from the past that he had not gotten over, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actually don't like it when, and the most recent one always bashed his exes.
Yeah.
But it was more on like, so you didn't take accountability for anything. It was all them, and you didn't do anything wrong. That kind of thing. But
well, the way I approach that would be for me is like, yeah, here's where it didn't work for me, and here's the growth I had from it, right? And that's what I've learned to do in terms of, oh my God, I didn't recognize that there's this narcissistic behavior, and now I've learned, and, you know, I really grew in this regard and can recognize those signs better, whatever, you know, like, and that's not to say, that's not dissing that person. That's just, they have tendencies that you can check off a box of narcissistic behavior.
Right.
I can give you facts.
Right.
That's not dissing them. They really aren't a bad person. Narcissists are not bad people. They have bad behavior.
Right. Very good way of looking at it.
You disagree? I can see it.
I mean, no, I don't think they're bad people. And in fact, you know, going back to the one with the escorts, he was not a bad person. He was actually, he had a very good heart.
Right.
Very good dad, hard worker, very good with his family. Like, he was a really good guy. He had an issue.
There's a glitch in the operating system.
Correct. And not everyone's perfect, but that was a major flaw that I could not deal with.
And there's a point where you're like, that's when relationships end. I cannot deal with this. We all have baggage. We all have flaws. We're human. Right. No, there's no such thing as perfect. And that's quite frankly boring.
Right.
So you have to just figure out what weirdness, what flaws, what baggage we can put up with.
What your deal breakers are, yeah.
That's dating.
Yeah, exactly.
Relationships, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we could go on and on. We've only discussed like 5 of these, so we're definitely going to have a part 2, and we might have to bring back Sarah Mears or one of them to.
She's gonna have to read the book.
Partake in this.
Give her homework.
I gave it to her.
She's got to do homework.
So I'm gonna make sure she's done her homework.
I know, because I highlighted a couple of things, and now of course I can't find it. I'm like, how do I find where I bookmark things in here?
Yeah, I don't know. But
there really is some interesting things in here. I mean, the one that I want to talk about, and we can do it in part 2, but is like, again, the sex thing and the power. I think that's super interesting.
And that's going to be a long conversation.
I know.
I think we both have a lot to say about that one.
Well, it even goes back to, remember when you asked Mike on the episode with Mike and Jeffrey about what they think of a woman that sleep with them on the first date. And I think from the man's perspective, he's like, there's no problem. But I think if you look at the bigger picture, taking a step back from it, it's not a problem for them because now they don't have to commit. Right. So, and it would be interesting to ask him. I mean,
and they've accomplished what they wanted to accomplish. They don't have to work anymore.
Right.
You know?
And again, if you go away, like the guy says in the book, he's like, oh, it's okay. I've been there, done that, you know? So, and we've heard those things. I think they've been spun into a very negative light, but there's a truth that started that gets blown up. And I think you have to come back to the truth of like, and the video talks about, the economics of sex video talks about contraception changing the game because our grandparents couldn't just go have sex because it could produce a baby. Right. Now you and I can go have sex and it's not going to produce a baby. We can know 99% of the time it's not going to produce a baby. Right. Right.
And it's funny also that this guy and the Steve Harvey book is telling you not to do it.
Yeah. And I've been listening to a woman who has a podcast and programs on sex. And one of the things that she says in there, she calls it junk food sex, is kind of the economy we're in of dating and relationships. She's like, so you think about it, it's like convenient fast food, no spiritual nutrition, right, and casual sex. And she said a great way to think about it is, would you have a baby with this person? Not that you want to or going to, but would you have a baby with this person? I'm like, that's deep. Right. Because there's a lot of people that's a fuck no.
Right. No, right? Yeah, and I get that. And for us who aren't going to have babies, and I'm not going to play the 90-day game or anything like that, but for me, it's more like I need to be at a certain comfort level with you. For sure. And I need to know that this is not a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Right. Unless that's what I want it to be. Right. Which in most cases is not. Yeah. So I just need to have that connection. I've never been one to be able to just have a one-night stand. I had to be attracted, and there had to be some kind of emotional connection there. Yeah. For me,
might be a girl. Oh.
Huh?
You might be a girl.
Yeah, I might be a girl.
It's way more tendent for girls. But we need to come up with something like wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, but for men, like where we want to do it.
Right.
You're good at that.
Yeah,
Come
yeah.
up with your rap lyrics, spicy.
Right? I'll come with this. Come up with a song for the next one.
Wham bam. It's, you know what I mean? Like something that's, I don't know. I see. I can't. I'm not. That's not my game.
I'll have to think about.
I know
that
it's a
one.
good one. We got to come up with it. You know
I'll
how
audition for Izzy.
Yeah, how they came up with instead of Hooters, they had a bar that was called Cox, and it had like a rooster as their mascot. I don't think it went very far, but it was funny.
That's funny.
I know, where Hooters had the owl on the eyes. There were boobs, right? Anyway.
Oh my gosh.
I digress.
That's hilarious.
There's actually a gay bar in Lake Worth called Roosters for men.
Yeah,
gay.
that's
I think
not
I've heard of
shocking.
it. Yeah, that's funny.
It's actually fun. I've been there for drag shows.
I'm sure.
Gay bars are the funnest bars ever.
Dance out the night away. It's the best place to go dancing on the planet.
Really?
Yes, because you're not going to get like...
Yeah.
I mean, they might come dance on you, but you're like, they don't want anything, so whatever. Unless nowadays it might be different. I haven't been in a while, I will admit, because, you know, bi, whatever, pansexual, who knows, but...
Yeah, so when I was in my, like around 24, I was dating this guy that I had been actually best friends with since I was like 13, and we didn't date up until I was 24. We dated, we were going to Orlando to meet one of his friends, and he's like, I'll just meet you at 7 at XYZ. So we get to this bar, and after like 30 minutes, I'm like, wait a minute.
This is a gay bar.
It's a gay bar that he did on purpose. I'm like, what the fuck? And
Was it your first time ever in a gay bar?
yeah.
Oh.
And I loved it.
Yeah.
It
It's
was
so
great. But I could tell that these guys kept looking at him, and I'm like, something's weird here.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't really paying attention. I was paying attention to him, not everybody else. But at some point, I noticed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, we're in a gay bar.
Right.
You need to kick his ass. But we ended up staying there the entire night, had a blast.
Did you dance?
It was great. Oh, yeah.
So I went to law school in San Francisco.
Oh, gosh.
So 2 of my best friends from law school are gay. There were many, many gay people in my law school class, of course. But, you know, and I ended up living in what's called the Castro, which is the gay district of San Francisco. So, like, for a year. So, like, we threw a Halloween party on my friend John's birthday. Like, random people coming in and out of our house. You know, again, I was in my 20s, so I would never do that now. Plus, it's a different era. But, like, dancing in the Castro was the best music.
Yeah.
So good. So free. And, you know, it's that time of life where you talk about it in Boca, like in your 20s, you loved it, all this.
Right.
That's how I look back on that. So, like, late
That's awesome.
90s, early 2000s, amazing.
That's great.
It will never be the same in San Francisco again like it was then.
Yeah. No,
it was so
probably
good.
not. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So on that note, we'll have to make sure we do a part 2 of our previous one with Prime IV, and probably part 2 and 3 on this one. So
I mean, you know, we always need topics, so it's good.
Yeah.
We talk about it a lot more.
for sure.
Yeah.
So are we wrapping it up?
I think so. You have a hot date tonight.
I don't have a hot date tonight. I have a hot date with Pam and Tanya and Janine.
With the girl gang.
Yeah, that's the girl gang. Yeah.
Hot date with the girl
and
gang.
then maybe tomorrow night. We'll
Yeah.
see. That's still up in the air. We'll see how
Nice.
that goes. But yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, and be sure to
Stay tuned.